Yo, what's up, guys? Let's talk about the balance. So first of all, when is it gonna happen? A lot of people are expecting it this week. Personally, I don't expect that, and there's two reasons for that. First reason for that is that they had a postponed balance patch, which was supposed to be end of January, and they pushed it towards February, on like the first week of February somewhere, because of the collab. And in this case, I think they're going to be continuing on the postponed schedule of the balance patch, mainly due to the Legend tournament that is coming up on this weekend on the Saturday, and therefore ending of the season. I don't expect them to do a balance patch 1 week before the end of the season. They could do it, but I think they have never done that, so I would be very surprised if they actually do that. However, people are expecting it then in the first week of the new season, which is a possibility. However, they have a 2-week cycle for updates, and this week is supposed to be an update. Next week is not supposed to be an update. So right after the Legend tournament is normally no update. So therefore, I kind of expect it in the week of the 6th of April right here. Which means we're gonna have this shitty meta for another 2 weeks. But also this special league is kind of boring because it's without LDs. And nowadays everyone has some LDs, so this is going to be the most boring special league of just Josephine, Ereshion, and all of that kind of stuff. But that is for the date when it is. I expect it on the 6th of April. I could be wrong on that, but that is just my expectation. However, there are a lot of people that are expecting it on this week. I would say, and I think a lot of people can agree, that we're in one of the most sucky metas there is right now. It's really important if you get first pick or not. So if you can see over here, this was yesterday. I had a winning streak of about like 9 wins or something along those lines, or I had 9 out of 10 wins. But check this list below that. Wait, let me just zoom out a little bit. Look at this lose streak over here. I lost 11 matches out of 12, and then I went into a winning streak of 9 out of 10. That doesn't make any sense. I did not rerun anything. I did not change any kind of style of drafting. I changed absolutely nothing. The only thing that changed at that moment was RNG was more in my favor, or at least less against me. So it's the most sacky piece of shit meta we have. So we could use a really good balance patch. But are we actually gonna get one? I don't know. Because in all honesty, losing this amount of matches by just drafting the same as after, having the same builds as after, makes absolutely no fucking sense. Once again, Countwish, your RNG is fucking trash and fucking streaky, and you should look at it, but you probably don't, because you're too stubborn to actually acknowledge that it's terrible. But let's look at what they might actually do for a balance patch. So of course, the first one that falls the noticeable thing on is Ereshion. It's just climbing in pick rate more and more. It's the most picked unit in game, and it's looking at a 54 win rate, which is absolutely absurd. However, Ereshion has only been good for 1 patch, and mostly they don't nerf a unit right away after 1 patch. For example, the Phantom took 2 patches to get nerfed. However, Phantom was kind of figured out a little bit later because people were really focusing on Chakra at that meta and not as much on Phantom, and therefore it was not as crazy. Also, Phantom was less crazy than Ereshion in the first place because Ereshion is a first pick speed lead and there's no good answer to this. Whereas with the Phantom, at least you got the Water Gandalf at some point, and the Gandalf kind of did mess him up. So once again, they did the double down. They changed the meta, they nerfed the unit, so they kind of gutted it. Same happened with my Gojo. Change of meta, nerf the unit in the same process, and therefore you kind of mess it up. And why is that? Well, the simple fact is that if you don't have a good win rate with an Ereshion, and if you don't have a good win rate against an Ereshion, you just simply lose. Plus, these two things really do tend to fuck him up. So it's not the nerf as much, but it is the change of the meta that fucked him up even more. But then the nerf doesn't really help because the nerf was absolutely not a necessity with this meta right now. Another thing, looking at this win rate over here, 54 win rate on a 55 pick rate. Is that stronger than Prime Oliver? On this side, we can go back to other seasons and let's actually see where Prime Oliver was. Okay, so season 21 seems to be Prime Oliver, and Oliver was looking at a pick rate of 60% and a close to 55% win rate. Okay, so Prime Oliver was stronger than Prime Ereshion was. Only issue is, Oliver was pretty much a most picked unit for, I don't know, an ungodly amount of seasons. Like every season out there that I'm clicking through is pretty much still an Oliver main pick. And yeah, the Prime Oliver, it was definitely in G3 more noticeable than in lower ranks. That's definitely a fair statement, whereas Ereshion is a little bit more noticeable in all ranks. But Oliver was seated at like 55-ish win rate for like 3 seasons straight. So Prime Oliver was stronger than Ereshion. So do we expect a nerf on Ereshion? To be honest, I expect yes. If they don't do it, they're probably like there's 2 ways that they could do to it. Buff a other unit to counter Ereshion. That could be an option. I'll talk about a few options for that in a second. Or nerf Ereshion / Solvark. And I think Solvark is kind of due for a nerf as well. The unit is also sitting at like a 53-ish win rate. But the easiest nerf they could do if we're looking at the skills is make this an attack bar decrease, but not an absorb. That will at least lowering the cycling a bit, gives less chance for cycling on violent, gives less chance on cycling for despairs and that kind of good stuff. So I would say that nerfing him is relatively easy. Does that gut these units? No, I think they're still like crazy strong, even with that nerf, even on the Solvark, even on the Ereshion. It's still going to be a crazy strong unit because simply 33 lead. I expected him to have more Megumi issues when I first saw this buff. Therefore, I classified it as not that great of a buff. But yeah, he just doesn't have that because of the Josephine Gandalf just really messing up the Megumi the moment that people pick Megumi. So he's just good with everything. That's the big issue. Or what they could do is no heal blocks. And the heal block is actually more nasty than you might think because the heal block is really messing up the hard counters to it, such as the Gandalf, such as the Seimei, such as any kind of healers that could be a good counter into this. Even an Abellio. If you remove the heal block, then you would already remove a really big portion of the kit. So I think that those are two options. Or they're going to buff a fire unit to be 33 speed lead. Normally, I would say within the game, you had certain speed leads and then you would expect other speed leads to pop up at some point. However, with Ereshion being the second 33 speed lead on wind, it doesn't make too much sense because I was looking for a 28 lead on wind, which we simply do not have, and I expected this dude to actually become that speed lead because he doesn't have a lead yet in speed, or the whole family doesn't have a lead yet in speed, but they do have arena lead, so I expected him to be a 28 speed lead in arena. But rather than that, they just made an Ereshion a 33 lead. But then if we're looking at it, which fire unit could become a 33 speed lead? Because these are all of the arena leads in game. And only things I can think of is like making a Carno a 33 lead would definitely mess him up. This thing a 33 lead because that whole family doesn't... Oh, no, wait, we already have a speed one in that. We don't have a speed one in your family, I think. We don't have a speed lead in your family neither. The only one I can really think of is either this or that for a speed lead because the other families already have a speed lead in there. Could be an option. I kind of doubt it, but Counter-West has been doing weird stuff. But then again, if you would make either one of these two a 33 speed lead, that's gonna be really busted. Because Carno in the end with 33 speed lead would be really strong. This thing with 33 speed lead would be way too strong. So therefore, I kind of doubt it that this would happen. And I think it's more likely that something along these lines will happen. Then let's look at some other units that I do expect for nerf. We have, of course, the Water Gandalf. Third most picked unit in game, 51 win rate. Absolutely menace of an annoying, stupid shit of a unit. Easiest thing they can do is S322, a 10% bar. That is a very simple one. Or the S2 for +1 cooldown. I think that those two things are the most common that they could do on a Water Gandalf. I am fearing a little bit for the following, because we have a shared skill 2 on this one and a shared skill 2 on this one, that they're going to buff these two to become as toxic or even more toxic than the Water Gandalf itself. Could be. I don't even want to talk about those because fuck those passive units, but I'm expecting one of those two nerfs, maybe even both. No, I think just one of the two. Another unit that's absolutely insane on win rates these days is a Josephine. Josephine kind of is this necessity of a annoying unit to counter a bunch of stuff, but I think she's been kind of overdoing it a little bit too much. I think the most simple thing is going to be her S3 CD +1. I think that's the easiest way that they could go about this without like gutting her, but her sitting as a counter pick kind of style of unit at a 52 win rate in the 4v4, even more than 52, it's absolutely absurd. So yeah, I can expect a little bit of a nerf on her on this stuff. Also, Gianna's doing real bad this season, to be honest. Well, 50-50 isn't bad, but for Gianna kind of level value, kind of bad. But I think it's just the main issue. Ereshion does her job. Like, if you have a Despair Ereshion, some people are just rocking a 33 speed lead Gianna and it's working for them. So, I don't know. I don't think they would go for a nerf on the Megumi, Shinx, and Heigang because those are kind of trying to counter the Ereshion and they have a bad job at doing so, looking at those win rates in all honesty. Same for Layla. It's kind of an annoying unit. Same with the Mikuni, same with the Seiishizo, but they're not crazy enough on win rates that I think they would get any nerf. Funny enough, Okeanos is doing real good as well, but I can't really expect a Okeanos nerf in all honesty. Nobara, however, I think that Nobara is a little bit too high on win rates. Aya / Wind Nobara. I would be okay with her if she gets either a less 30 to 25 bar on debuff, or we're gonna do a 20% HP, 25% HP to a 20% HP. I think that will be fair, because right now she perks once you lose half HP. It's a little bit too much. Like, losing 40% HP is by all means already really fine and really strong. And she's looking way too high at win rate and pick rate for being this strong, while also being one of the highest ban rates out there. Then if we start looking from highest win rates, let's see what's interesting. Well, Maximilian is just heavily boosted by an Ereshion. Dark Aragon is kind of boosted by Ereshion as well. I don't really expect the Dark Aragon nerf. He's kind of on the edge where you might say is like, hey, maybe needs a little bit of a down tuning, but I think he's fine. I would rather nerf some of the setups for him and then just see how he works out after. And any of the other units kind of feel fine-ish. Like, they don't have absolutely crazy win rates or crazy pick rates or crazy ban rates. So I think for nerfs, it would be, for me personally, the Ereshion plus Solvark nerf by doing this, or boosting something else to Crazy Oblivion, a Water Gandalf nerf, a Josephine nerf, and an Aya nerf. Those are the three things that I would be looking at. But then talking about buffs. Buffs is always harder because there's so many units shit in the game. That's just the fair factor to it. There's so many bad units in the game, which makes it really hard to say is like, okay, what actually does get buffed? However, I found somewhat of a trend for this. So if we're looking, this is the 2025 tier list that I made. And we saw that the event hunt went from 0 to hero in 2025. If we're looking at the 2026 tier list, we see that Solvark and Ereshion went from 0 to hero in 2026 early. Same for the Inosuke, actually went from kind of 0 to pretty decent. So it might be that one of these units over here, looking at a Wind Paul / Wind Hwarang / Water Hwarang / Wind Jin, because those units are relatively more new, so therefore more likely to get buffed. So I wouldn't be surprised if the buffs land on this. For me, Wind Jin was the expected buff of a 28 speed lead in Arena, which I think is a fair buff to this unit. Wind Paul, I'm not too sure about. Wind Paul is this unit that gives bar the moment that an increased cooldown happens. If you add anything more on top of this, which will also give you bar, I think that he might be pretty annoying. Let's say that you give him a bar on pushback or something like that. He kind of replaces the whole Jackson vibe at that point. But if you give him something like that, he would at least counter some of the Ereshions, and he would super hard counter Aragon. So him as a counter to an Aragon, because this would heavily counter Aragon, I can see kind of happening. This Hwarang thing, I'm really not sure. They tried to add a silence at the end of his skill, but that just gives him an activation check on resistance, which you normally don't want to do at all, which kind of just makes him weird. However, if they start making him for a strip into multi-hits and then a silence, then we're talking. So S3 strip could be an option. I just naming out a bunch of things that could happen. This thing, I think he should guaranteed land this pushback on the skill 3. It is a nice skill, but just him having activation checks kind of mess it up. So yeah, his S3 on no rest check I think would definitely make him more interesting and at least usable. But that is if we're looking at units all the way at the bottom. Sure, they probably add some other units from the top, but this is just looking at absolutely the worst. But let's do the same thing for buffs LDs. So this is the tier list that I made for 2025. And let's look at the bottom. So they upgraded Jaeger. They kind of upgraded these two. They gave that a little bit of a buff. These not really. I think they buffed you a few times. They buffed you once or twice. And these are all... Mortera's actually nicely buffed right now. Dark Demon is nicely buffed right now. So a bunch of these units from 2025 are now usable in 2026. Let's see what I placed for the 2026 tier list, which we have over here. Still a whole bunch of units in here. So pretty much anything that's 60 and below could get a buff. Well, Leona is already... Wait, I think Leona was recently buffed, but it's still ass. I don't even remember. Oh yeah, she got the more damage increase on our last balance patch. But yeah, I would say any of those units you see here at the bottom, there's a whole bunch of things that could happen to those. So I think I'm just gonna do C-screen and then just gonna yap about it for that. So I'm just going to talk about any of those 60 and below, how I would personally buff them. Actually, Kha'Zix's current state is not that bad. I've noticed that he's kind of a fire Legolas. But Sean increased the base stat. This one, I would say remove the Awakening in the S2, put the Awakening in S1, and then give it 15 attack bar on an S1 critter. So back to the 45 as it used to be, and remove that whole Awakening on the S2. Nigong, I would say give him the damage up regardless, or give him damage down when, I think that was something that Obabo said. Give him damage down the moment that the S3 is used, but if the S3 is not used, give him damage up on the S2. So damage down for your whole team if your S3 is used. If the S3 is not used, you give damage up to your S2. I kind of like that one. Smart one by Obabo right there. Isis, I still think that she needs a guaranteed land or something stupid. Humble Awakening into the S2 to completely rework the S2, make a passive out of the fucking S2 to give yourself an attack buff, crit buff. By all means, a crit damage buff, I don't give a shit. Anything else to improve that, or maybe deal extra damage on a death break, or I don't give a shit what. Benedict is kind of bad, but I'm not really sure how to improve him. Maybe just some damage improvement right there. Salah, maybe just make him less RNG. Maybe actually be able to target where your secondary hit goes yourself. That would be kind of nice. Would be kind of a unique mechanic as well. Liliana, she would have to start off in her demon form. Then she's at least usable in a bunch of stuff, and she's not immediately killed off the battlefield before she goes into demon form. Or maybe if she dies the first time, she goes into demon form. Something like that. Fridion, I'm not too sure. It's kind of usable-ish nowadays, but yeah, I think he was already buffed with the Ereshion buff. This thing is also already buffed. Jaeger is already buffed, so those are totally fine. Lydia, I think she just needs a damage improvement or build in Nemesis or something. Hurtite, I think Hurtite should work on the Temple of Chaos. Maybe it will be too broken for them. I don't even give a shit if that's the case, but that's pretty much his only usability. This thing, I'm not too sure. By all means, just give him a build in Despair or a small like stun chance on his S2 when he's stripped, something along those lines. I still think that the Dark Geralt should be a guaranteed land of the bomb if you have more than, let's say, 3 or 4 buffs on your own ass, that you guaranteed land your, what's it called? Guaranteed land the stun from the bomb, but also guaranteed land your bomb. Sukuna, I think, should simply be a unit for Temple of Chaos. Give him a damage improvement if you're not being hit on your last turn, and therefore in Temple of Chaos he would become meta. This thing, I have no clue, but you're trying to be a Molong, so might as well just be a better Molong at it. Leona recently has been buffed for a little bit of damage improvement. I think her skill 2 actually reads pretty ambiguous, and that is by, if we read this, is attacks the enemy 2 times to remove all beneficial effects with a 75% chance, and then provokes the enemy for 1 turn. It does kind of read as like, hey, we're attacking 2 times and both of them would strip. No, that's actually not the case. The first one strips, and then the second one provokes. The first one never provokes, and the second one never strips. If we read on the Okeanos, he actually does both on the same time. So it does kind of read ambiguous, and I think that's also right away a good thing for a buff. Make the Leona double activation on provoke, but also double activation on the strip, and I think she would be kind of okay. Pure vanilla cookie thingy, revised with a little HP, I have no fucking clue, to be honest. And same for these, at least you should be working on bosses, and you want to be a dark UG real bad, and I think you're just made to be bad. So those are my buffs and nerfs that I do give a prediction for. How far off I am, I will check in a future video itself. Let me know in the comments if you fully agree or fully disagree. I think for all of the LDs that are at the top right now, I think it's kind of okay. Like, sure, some are pretty strong. Some like this one is already kind of, was hard. Like this one, for example, was super strong because of Phantom. This one is already a lot weaker. I think Gianna's not really worth an 85, maybe more of an 80. This one is probably more towards like 80 as well. This one is probably more towards 75 even. But yeah, things do kind of switch back and forth a little bit. Well, let's see what we get for a balance patch, and let's see when it happens, because in honesty, I don't fucking know. But are we gonna get disappointed? Yes, we are. So thanks a lot for watching for this one. See you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.